Hey everybody, Max Boltman here alongside Mark Lazarus for a new episode and a new season, really a new era, if I can be that bold, of the Athletic Hockey Show. If you are watching us on YouTube, welcome. Hopefully you've heard us before, but if not, well, you got to see our faces, so that's tough. But we are now on YouTube. For those of you not watching on YouTube, you can go to youtube.com/@theathletic-hockey-show. Make sure you subscribe and follow along all season. It's going to be really fun. I hope it's half as fun, Laz, as what we saw in the final preseason game from the Lightning and the Panthers on Saturday night. A different kind of fun, perhaps, but fun nonetheless.
I'll tell you, I was at that game. I'm down here ahead of the season opener doing some stories on the Panthers. I had my story. You can see it on The Athletic today. It was not fun at all. It was the stupidest thing I've ever seen. It was a 3-hour and 10-minute preseason hockey game. There were 16 ejections. There were 312 penalty minutes. At one point, there were 3 Tampa Bay skaters on the entire bench, plus the backup goalie. They had a goal. A goal was scored. Jesper Boquist scored a goal. And then 6 minutes later in game time, like 40 minutes later in real time, they took it off the board because Nico Mikkola was on the ice for that goal. And he had been kicked out of the game and didn't know it. This was, look, I hate the preseason. Players hate the preseason. I'm glad that the new CBA has us knocking this down to 4 preseason games in the future. I will be happy when it gets down to 0 because it's bad hockey. Nobody likes it. Nobody wants to pay for it. And let me just say, maybe the Panthers and Lightning, 2 teams that despise each other, should not be playing 3 consecutive preseason games in a 5-day span.
Yeah, it feels like the whole point of the preseason at this point basically is to try to get guys a few reps and not get hurt. And I'm guessing that that's why they're playing each other this often, is because it's easy travel to and from. It's easy on their bodies, same day travel kind of deal. But if you're going to go and take 300 penalty minutes in a game, I think we lose the player safety. Keep it
Aaron
healthy.
Ekblad got cross-checked in the mouth like 2 minutes into the game. And a lot of this was in response to, it was Greer who had a big hit on Brandon Hagel, a cheap shot in the second game of this 3-game series. Nobody needs this. This isn't helping anybody. The preseason should be about the young guys trying to prove that they can play in the NHL. It's always a great story when some kid goes out there, scores a couple of goals, makes a big hit, makes a good defensive play, and finds himself a spot on the opening night roster. But more and more, we're just seeing this kind of nonsense. And, maybe there's some people left over from the 70s who like this, but it was just excruciating to watch.
Well, we've got a lot of Panthers to talk today because I think the main kind of angle for this show is going to be our biggest questions for this season. We've outlined 10 of them. And the most important one is, what do the Florida Panthers look like without Aleksander Barkov? I mean, this is a team that is not short on injuries. Matthew Tkachuk, I think you can argue those are the 2 biggest identity setters for the Florida Panthers. But Barkov is their most important player. He's their heartbeat. I think he deserves MVP consideration every year. And they're going to be without him. And I wonder what you think they look like in a non-Barkov world for at least a long stretch of this season.
I had a nice long conversation with Paul Maurice on Friday after practice, and he had to catch himself because at one point he was about to say that Sasha Barkov is the best player in the world. And he caught himself and then just said, you know what? He's just a really good player. Let's leave it at that. But there is a case to be made. He's like the perfect hockey player, right? He does everything well at both ends of the rink. He kills penalties. He scores on the power play. He is irreplaceable. But I think what we're going to find out is just how good of a 2-way player Sam Reinhart is. Reinhart was number 1 on my Selke ballot last year. He finished 2nd on the ballot. He was 4th the year before. We're going to find out just how good he is because he's playing on a line with Barkov almost exclusively and putting up these incredible numbers, better defensive metrics than Barkov, while scoring, I think he had 96 goals over the last 2 seasons. So he is now the number 1 guy. He's the number 1 offensive guy, and he's the number 1 defensive forward for this team. Can he do it with Sam Bennett on his as his center instead of Barkov? Can Anton Lundell, is this the year that he takes a step into stardom? He is incredible, like Barkov-light player. There's so much depth in Florida, and their back end is so good, and they still have Sergei Bobrovsky. A lot of people are talking about, maybe this team doesn't make the playoffs this year. I'm just not buying that. It'll be harder, but they're still going to get in. And when they get there, they're going to be dangerous.
And that was the debate. Like, as I filled out my Selke ballot, it was, okay, is Reinhart this good, or is he playing with Barkov, right? And you say his better metrics, like when 2 guys are on a line, those are skewed by those like little 10-second increments when one guy gets off the ice a little bit sooner. And it's really hard to parse that. So you're right. It's going to be a really interesting year for Sam Reinhart. I think it's the Sam Bennett component of all this is fascinating to me because he was one of the most interesting free agents last year. He was the guy that we all looked at and were like, how much do you pay this guy who, for the 82 regular season games, is a really good, but not like headline free agent level player? The playoffs flip on, he won the Conn Smythe. He deserved to win the Conn Smythe. He was one of the most important players in both of the Florida Panthers Stanley Cup runs. Now he's going to have to be that important to them during the regular season. You mentioned Lundell. Like Lundell can ease that burden on him for sure. But I think Sam Bennett is under a huge spotlight this season as well after signing that contract.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Bennett is like an ideal number 2 center, but he's got to be your number 1 this year, right? So that's a huge question that this team has to answer. But again, you look at that team and it's terrifying to look at their cap sheet because every one of these guys is signed through the end of the decade, through 2030. Like, so they're going to be here for a long time to come. They might get better in the long run by learning how to play without Barkov this year. They're going to learn a lot about themselves and about who can play what kind of roles. But I think Lundell is really the guy that I think takes this huge step this year. Bennett, I feel like he is what he is. You know, he is a guy who is made for playoff hockey and his game succeeds. But we've seen those guys year after year after year that just, you can't do that. You can't play that way for 82 games. It's too much. So I think Bennett will be fine. I think Lundell has to be great for this team to be what it needs to be.
I mean, his line with Marchand and Luosterainen was a defining part in all of their series victories, their entire run. And now it's just going to be even more ice time. Maybe that can be an okay thing for the Panthers. That can elevate them. It can give Lundell more confidence. Obviously, you want guys at his age to start grabbing more and more responsibility. We're going to find out. If the Florida Panthers, I'm going to assume the Florida Panthers are no longer your pick for the Stanley Cup if they were to begin with after this injury.
They were not.
Aleksander Barkov. They were not. Okay. Who is your favorite in a post-Barkov injury world? Your favorite to win the Stanley Cup?
I am Charlie Brown, and the Dallas Stars are my Lucy. I'm going to pick them for the rest of time until I finally am correct.
And you got a chance at it. The Dallas Stars are really, really good.
They're really good.
They're going to have a full season of Mikko Rantanen. I think any ideas of like the growing pains, the fit were answered pretty thoroughly by what he did in that first playoff series against Colorado. But I think they only get smoother as the more time that he has to practice with this group, to build chemistry with this group. Thomas Harley takes another step. He was a massive star turn last year, and he takes another step in that. So I think the Dallas Stars are a very valid pick. Who would you guess, though, as we do our BetMGM segment, our sports betting partner, who would you guess is the favorite? It's co-favorites. I'll give you that hint.
I'm guessing the Edmonton Oilers are one of them.
They are. The Edmonton Oilers, of course, have been to the last 2 Stanley Cup finals, lost to the Panthers. Their co-favorite at plus 800 odds is my pick to win the Stanley Cup. The new and improved, featuring 100% more Mitch Marner, Vegas Golden Knights.
You said new. I was like, are you going to say the Rangers right now? Seriously? I was going to reach across the screen and smack you in the face. Vegas, I get it. Yeah, you got Mitch Marner up there, Jack Eichel. He's playing for a contract. There's a lot to like in Vegas right now. That is a good team. That is a ruthless team. And you know they're going to figure out a way to keep adding somehow. Money doesn't seem to exist in the world of the Vegas Golden Knights. Yeah, absolutely a good pick. Doesn't it feel more open this year than it has in a long time? I can name 7 or 8 teams that I could say realistically could win the cup. I think Dom and Shayna and Gentili did their preview. Didn't they have Tampa Bay as the best team in the league this year? Like a team that their run was supposed to be over, and here they are.
Here's the thing. I picked Tampa Bay at the start of last playoffs to win the Stanley Cup, and Florida, snuffed that out in a hurry.
Yep.
But now in this new landscape, I think a lot of the things that I liked about Tampa last April, I still really like about them. I think they're still very loaded up front. I think they have kind of restocked their third line, and I don't know if it'll ever be quite what it was in their heyday, the way that their third line, much like what the Panthers did last year, changed matchups for them. They still have Andrei Vasilevsky. They still have Victor Hedman. I think the Tampa Bay Lightning have as good a chance as anybody, as at least coming out of the East. I just think the real heavyweights are in the West this year.
I agree. It's been that way for a while now, really. The Panthers notwithstanding, it feels like the balance of power is in the West, even though the East has been dominating for a long time. You look at that Central Division alone, you've got Dallas and you've got Colorado. Colorado's a trendy pick to win the Cup again this year. They're just so damn talented. The Winnipeg Jets are the reigning President's Trophy winner. You got the Oilers and the Knights in the Pacific. I feel like those 5 teams, to me, those are the 5 best teams in hockey. There's nobody in the East that I would put up against them. I think the world of Tampa and Toronto is still, up there and talented, and Florida is not going away. I'm certain of that. But I don't think New Jersey's ready to make that leap yet. I don't think that really any of these teams, Ottawa and Montreal are not there yet. I still think that the road to the Stanley Cup is going to go through the West.
4 of the top 5 by BetMGM Stanley Cup odds are in the West. Oilers in Vegas at plus 800, the Avalanche at plus 850, and the Stars at plus 900. The Carolina Hurricanes are the other team in that mix. They're tied with Colorado at plus 850. Then some of the other teams you mentioned, Panthers and Lightning plus 1100, New Jersey Devils plus 1400. You get the Toronto Maple Leafs at plus 1600. And after that, you're into the kind of the longer shots, the 2000 and up club.
We have the Rangers and the Winnipeg Jets have the same odds to win the Stanley Cup. A team that face-planted so badly and missed the playoffs last year that they had to rethink the whole thing. And the Jets won the President's Trophy, and they have the same odds to win the Stanley Cup.
What's the difference between the New York Rangers and the Winnipeg Jets to you? Because I think not much of one.
I mean, obviously, the goaltenders are what you go to first.
It's an elite goaltender that you're asking to carry the mail and a bunch of other things for you, right? Like they are everything to their teams. There is some star power for sure. I mean, Adam Fox, Josh Morrissey, really good defenseman. Corey Proman's going to jump through my window here and tell me that Adam Fox is not on the level of Josh Morrissey. That might even be true. I don't know. But I think that they're actually remarkably similarly constructed teams. I might slightly prefer the Rangers forward group to what the Jets are rolling out this year. I mean, Panarin and Kyle Connor, you have, down the middle. I think New York, you got to have Trocheck, Zibanejad, Miller. I think I'm taking that, and we'll obviously get to Jonathan Toews later, but I think I'm taking that over what the Winnipeg Jets are rolling out with Scheifele, Lowry, and Toews.
All right, well, let's just go right to one of our questions was, can the Rangers rebound? Let's just put that in right now since we're talking
I think yes. I think Mike Sullivan walks into a roster that is made to win right now, and I think he will get them back into the playoffs. Is this
made to win? I mean, Lafreniere regressed. Adam Fox regressed. The power play was terrible. JT Miller is your captain. I don't love the blue line beyond, Fox and Gavrikov. It's just a bunch of guys. I don't like a lot about this Rangers team. It's aging in all the wrong ways. Panarin seems to be declining slightly. Zibanejad, is he still a guy? There's no star power on this team whatsoever outside of the goalie. And Adam Fox is not the player that he was a couple of years ago. I have deep concerns about this Rangers team.
I will grant that I would take Josh Morrissey over Adam Fox, like head up in terms of your number one defenseman. But I think I'm also taking Gavrikov well before I'm taking the number 2 Jets defenseman. I think it's Dylan Sandberg, and he's out for the first 6 to 8 weeks of this year. So honestly, I think that these two teams are remarkably similar. I'm surprised that you're surprised that they have the same odds.
Well, I'm surprised just in the fact that one of these teams was the best team in the league last year, and one of them missed the playoffs. Vegas, for all of its savviness, is usually not this ahead of the curve in anticipating one team making that big of a leap and one team taking that big of a decline. That's why I'm surprised.
I think they're going to meet in the middle, and they're both. I mean, I think Winnipeg will be maybe a little bit better than a wild card team. I think they'll be, a 2 or 3 in the Central Division.
And I think it's a tough division. There's no doubt about it. The Central Division is so much more difficult than the Metro that you have 105 points and be in 4th place in the Central.
That one doesn't surprise me. Do you buy? I mean, Mike Sullivan comes in. He's one of the most respected coaches in hockey. Do you buy the kind of impact that he can have? I mean, usually we see the new coach bump more as a mid-season thing, but I think it could happen at the start of the season for the Rangers.
It could. I mean, we've seen it with previous Rangers coaches where they come in and then they last 2 years and then they're gone. I don't know if it makes that big a difference. Is he going to single-handedly solve the power play? Is he going to bring Lafreniere back to where he was 2 years ago when he was on the verge of stardom? I don't know how much you can do as a head coach with a veteran team like this. This isn't like a young team where he can mold it and reshape it. This is a pretty veteran team that's going to be kind of set in its ways. They should be better under Sullivan. He's an excellent coach, but I don't know if he's going to single-handedly come in and completely change the complexion of this team.
I think it's the right combination of when you have veteran players who want to win, you bring in one of the most respected voices. Like in terms of presence, like Mike Sullivan is going to command that room extremely well. He's the head coach of Team USA. He's won Stanley Cups. His word is going to carry a lot of weight in that room with a lot of players who are going to know what he's talking about. He's not going to have to teach hockey to these kids. He's not going to have to teach what it's like to be in the NHL to these guys. They're going to know what it is. And I think they're going to be really motivated. You mentioned like JT Miller as the captain. I know how it all went in Vancouver last year. But I think you bring a guy that fiery, that competitive into a locker room of players who they've kind of seen. This core of Rangers players has pretty much seen it both ways. They've seen fantastic success in getting to the conference final, and they've seen what it's like last year when everything goes awry. I think that they're going to be bought in, and I think they are going to get back to the playoffs. So that's my prediction for the Rangers. Peter Baugh, has been all over me whenever I've tried to hype up the Rangers the last couple of years, and he's often been right. So.
The Miller of it all is very interesting to me because he's such a different guy than Jacob Trouba. For all of his big, massive, bombastic hits on the ice, Trouba's kind of a quiet guy, right? Where Miller is all like, fire and brimstone in a lot of ways. So I'm curious to see how that lands with the new team. The Rangers are fascinating. The Rangers are always interesting. Give them this much. They're never boring. And this is another year where they could just be anything. And you tell me about these veterans who want to win. Where are these veterans who don't want to win, Max? Explain these to me.
That's not my point. My point is these veterans who do want to win. I'm not saying that there's all these veterans around the world who don't, but I'm saying you have this collection of guys who are like all veterans. They all know what the clock is. Like the Rangers have this assembly of guys who it's like you have to do this the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, their biological clocks are ticking. I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make. I'm not saying that there's, all these guys around the league who could take it or leave it. They just want the Marriott points or whatever on the road. So
no, that's me. That's me.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's get into the player movement, or I don't know, hypothesized player movement, wish-casted player movement portion of the program here. Everyone's going to be wondering 2 big questions this year around the NHL. Is Sidney Crosby finishing the season as a Pittsburgh Penguin? And is Connor McDavid finishing the season as an Edmonton Oiler? I'll let you pick which one we hit first.
Let's start with Crosby, because I feel like I don't know. It feels more realistic to me at this point that he could be traded, which is almost shocking to me that we've reached this point. But I feel like we've gotten a little too precious about Sidney Crosby, right? I mean, we've seen Bobby Orr as a Blackhawk, Mike Modano as a Red Wing, Ray Bourque as an Avalanche, Patrick Kane as a Ranger, Jonathan Toews as a Jet. This is just what happens now. And I love the idea of a guy spending his whole career with one team. I really do. Like, I'm a Mets fan right now, and I'm dreading seeing Pete Alonso in a Yankees uniform next year. I'm going to be bashing my head against the wall when I see that. It's the worst. But I'd frankly rather see Sidney Crosby in the playoffs again than see him retire as a Penguin. And if he retires as a Penguin, we're never going to see him in the playoffs again. So I want to go to Montreal. Let's go have some fun, man.
Yeah, so much of this comes back to the Pat Brisson comments that Pat gave to Pierre LeBrun. Brisson, obviously Crosby's agent. And I think that I know Crosby in the wake of this has talked about, like, look, I didn't ask him to say that. He didn't, run that by me. I do think that Brisson had a really good point, though, right? And whether it's a coordinated thing or not, I think is kind of beside the point. Common sense often wins out in these situations, right? And I think Brisson is right. Sidney Crosby should be on playoff teams. That's who he is. Sidney Crosby is a winner, above all. Like, when you talk about Sidney Crosby's legacy, there's going to be players who are better goal scorers than him. There's going to be players who are better playmakers than him. There are very few, if any, and I'm struggling to think of any, better winners in the history of the NHL than Sidney Crosby. And depriving the NHL of Crosby, everyone involved, all stakeholders of him in the playoffs is depressing.
Yeah, and I think deep down, Crosby would never say it because he loves Pittsburgh. He's so loyal. It's one of the things people love about him is he's a genuine, loyal person. But deep down, he doesn't want to just play out the string. He's still a great player, right? He is still an elite top 10 player in the world. He should go somewhere and take advantage of that. He's not some old guy just clinging to the NHL. This guy is still great. And he doesn't want to waste the rest of his career just for the sake of being a one uniform player. I think he would love to be, if he got traded, there would be tears. It would be really hard. That first practice would be bizarre and weird to him. And the first time the puck drops at the Bell Center or wherever he goes at, Ball Arena in Colorado, wherever he is, and he feels that juice again, he's going to be like, yeah, I made the right call here. He deserves it. We deserve it. The hockey world deserves it.
Right. So I said it's in everyone's best interest for Crosby to be back in the playoffs, right? And the Pittsburgh Penguins are probably hearing that, and their fans are probably hearing that and saying, right, with us. So quit trying to get us to trade him, right? I want to ask you, do you think that is, I guess, both possible and realistic of the Pittsburgh Penguins to believe that they can get back with him? Or is this situation where to get back, Crosby's going to keep them out of the bottom 3, bottom 5 for sure. They're going to have a hard time getting a Gavin McKenna as long as they have Sidney Crosby.
Oh, they're getting Gavin McKenna. They are 100%. It's been 20, every 2 decades, they get the best kid in the world. That's how it works. They got Lemieux, and then they get Crosby, and now they're getting McKenna. There's no doubt in my mind there's going to be a frozen ping pong ball with the Pittsburgh Penguins logo on it. That is happening. But yeah, I mean, is that beneficial to the Penguins? Is it good for the Penguins to have Crosby make them finish 7th to last instead of 2nd to last? Don't the Penguins benefit in the long run from trading him and getting, a host of draft picks or prospects or something? Because there's not a lot of youth in that system, man. I read the Penguins writers, and they're always like, oh, look at this guy that nobody's ever heard of. He could be a star someday. They're desperate. They're desperate for youth and hope in the future. And Sidney Crosby can provide that for them by being traded.
In a sense, he can, right? But Laz, you covered the Patrick Kane trade. Like, you don't get for these guys the Claude Giroux trade from the Flyers. Like,
Yeah,
I think Crosby would get more than those guys did. Partly because he's Sidney Crosby, and partly because I think he's still got a little bit more juice in the, gas in the tank than those guys did at that time. But man, you really don't get what you should. And you certainly don't get like the legacy benefits of that. And the idea that, Sidney Crosby can bring some of these players along, right? And I get what you're saying about Harrison Berneke and Ville Koivunen and not being, true star prospects, right? But I do think the Penguins are going to place a whole lot of value in having those guys learn from Sidney Crosby, of being able to have a Sidney Crosby statue and he only was ever a Penguin. And I'm not saying that erases the need to get talent, but I don't know that they're going to get enough talent to actually outweigh that.
You're right. I mean, he's going to have full control. He's going to go where he wants to go, but there's going to be a bigger market for Sidney Crosby than there was. All due respect to Claude Giroux and Patrick Kane, they, at that stage of their career, were not where Sidney Crosby still is, and certainly don't have the stature. Sidney Crosby's top 4 all time. He is on Mount Rushmore. I think more people would agree with that than wouldn't.
Oh yeah.
So even at his age, he's a better player now than those guys were at that stage of their career, at a younger age. And he has much, much, much bigger name recognition, star power, respect, the what he brings to a locker room. Yes, you're not going to get full value in a Sidney Crosby trade. It's just never going to happen. You're not going to get the next Sidney Crosby, right? But the Penguins need to do something here, and just clinging to this trio of guys just for the sake of clinging to them, it's not doing their fans any favors, and it's not doing themselves any favors.
All right, so we're trying to trade Crosby. Are we trying to trade McDavid? Or I think he sticks in Edmonton, but I'm not saying it's on like an 8-year deal, but I think he sticks in Edmonton for at least another couple years.
I want to see him reach free agency so badly. I think I'm Team Chaos all the way. It would be absolutely incredible to see a bidding war on the open market for maybe the single most talented hockey player that's ever lived in his prime. It'd be incredible. I just can't imagine it, right? We know what he's going to do. He's going to wind up signing for 2 or 3 years, which is what, frankly, he should always be doing. It's what all stars should be doing, especially with the way the cap's going up right now. You should always be signing short-term deals and betting on yourselves. And the fact is, like we talked about earlier in the show, the Oilers are still among the best teams in the league. They still have as good a chance to win the Stanley Cup as just about anybody. And the teams that can afford him right now probably aren't better than the Oilers. As bad as their goaltending situation might be, as frustrated as McDavid might be, the Oilers, of the teams that could afford him, are probably one of their best bets. Could he go to Dallas? Would he go to Dallas? I don't know. But chances are we're never going to get to see it. I think he signs a 3-year deal, and he tells the Oilers, hey, tell Stan Bowman, build me a long-term winner if you want me to stick around longer than that.
You'd love him to go to Dallas, and your predictions will finally be correct about the Stars.
They finally win the Cup. It'll finally happen.
I think you talked about being able to afford him. I think any team that has an inkling that it's an option will just do whatever it takes to afford him. Like, they'll just give away one of their best players because they know they can go sign McDavid, basically, right? Like, that's how that would work. I agree, though. I think a short-term deal makes sense there. I would pay money, actually, to have been able to have a camera on Connor McDavid when he heard about Kirill Kaprizov's $17 million deal and just see the rush of emotions in both directions going on in his head.
It's like a cartoon character. There's just dollar signs in his eyeballs. His tongue rolls out of his mouth like the mask. Yeah, I mean, if Kirill Kaprizov is a fabulous hockey player, but if he's worth $17 million, then McDavid's worth what, 25? I mean, my God.
And would you take, like, if you're McDavid and all of this is about, like, winning and being able to put the right team around him, can you have that position and then go ask for 18 million or 20 million? Like, is that even really the smart thing to be doing?
It's a tough situation to be in, right? Because, we talked about Sidney Crosby, and Crosby he never got paid what he was worth, right? He wanted his little 8 and 7 in there, and he wanted to take less so that the team could win. And McDavid has said pretty much the same, I believe, that, he doesn't feel like the need to break the bank. He wants to make sure that the Oilers can win. He doesn't want to hamstring them. But there's an obligation to your fellow stars here, too. The cap is going way up. Salaries are going way up. What Kirill Kaprizov did, as crazy as it looks on the outside, is very good for other elite players in the NHL. They're starting to get paid the way athletes in other sports are starting to get paid. And we can argue all day about whether that's good for the health of the league and if this is going to lead to another lockout in 5 years or whatever. But the fact is, if Connor McDavid signs for $15 or $16 million, there's going to be people that are mad at him. There's going to be other players. There's going to be agents that are mad at him because it's the rising tide lifts all boats, right? He's in an absolute no-win situation when it comes to the size of that contract. If he signs too big, he's selfish. If he doesn't sign enough, he's selfish. He can't win.
That's true. I think Connor McDavid and other star NHL players should be making more into that stratosphere, should be making 15 million plus, but you have to always weigh it against what the cost is to your team. And that's an unfair position to put these athletes in. I don't like having to be the one to point that out because I don't think, it should be Connor McDavid's responsibility to figure out how the Edmonton Oilers build a winner around him. But yet there is that trade-off. Like if you do try to raise the bar above Kaprizov, which by the way, he would be worth every penny of, he's fully deserving of, it does make it a little bit harder to build out the rest of the roster, especially when you already have, and Draisaitl's deal, by the way, now looks like the steal of the century in this new landscape.
And this only happens in hockey, right? Because baseball, there's no salary cap. Basketball, there's from what I understand, there's slots, like you can sign a max contract and it's predetermined. And in football, guys restructure their contracts when things aren't going well if they want to help the team out. You can't do any of that in hockey. It's a hard cap world, and it's unique in that way, in that, the more you take, the harder it is to win. It's just it's a zero-sum game in the NHL, and it's unfair. It's an unfair burden to put on these players, but Connor McDavid is thinking about it, and he's thinking about the optics of it. Whatever he does, it's not good, and that's a tough spot to be in.
So I guess from that lens, how many thank you cards did Jackson LaCombe get from the NHLPA?
Jackson LaCombe is making the same amount of money as Cale Makar. Kaprizov is making $5 million more than Mikko Rantanen. It's going to be wacky stuff here the next few years until this kind of course corrects and everyone reaches that next contract. If Jackson LaCombe, a real nice young player,
exactly,
not get me wrong,
really good player, I think that deal's going to age just fine.
It might age. That's what teams are doing, right? They're like, this guy's going to be a $15 million player in 3 years, so why don't we just throw all this money at him now, shock and awe him, and get him locked up long term? Because if Jackson LaCombe is worth $9 million, what is Cale Makar going to get in 2 years? 20? Probably, right? He's the second best player on the planet in a lot of people's minds.
The Red Wings' highest paid player is Dylan Larkin at $8.7 million. So a year ago, they extended Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider both on long-term deals. Seider for 7 years, Raymond for 8, in the $8 to $8.5 million range, right? 1 year later, they are just phenomenal steals. And that was after going right up to the doorstep of their highest paid player. And you're going to see a bunch of the contracts that were signed between 2022 and 2025 that age just like that. It's going to be fascinating.
We're going to have to get past that whole thing where it's like, well, this is our biggest star player, so nobody on the team can make more than that. These guys are going to have to put their egos aside and understand that the financial landscape of this league has shifted dramatically, and it's going to be years until it course corrects. Dylan Larkin should not be the highest paid player on the Red Wings 2 years from now. That's a problem if he is. That means that the Red Wings are being too precious about this. And these guys are going to have to kind of, just accept the fact that their timing was bad. They signed contracts at the wrong time and they didn't cash in, and that's life. And if they still play, if they remain at the top of their games, they'll get rewarded in the end of it.
And that's your point about the short-term deals for the start. I mean, in the NFL, whoever the most recent quarterback to get paid becomes pretty much the highest paid player in the league.
Don't
the cap's
sign for 8 years. Don't do it. It's a trap. It's what the billionaires want.
I just like if my bosses are listening to know that I would sign for 8 years. So go ahead and just email that over.
Especially for $17 million a year.
That's right. We got Jesse waiting for us here, but I want to hit you with one more before we get to him. Habs and Sens, two great stories last year, two rebuilding teams. The Sens longer than the Habs, but both rebuilding teams that broke through that make the playoffs. Which one are you buying, or both? Are you buying both, or are you buying neither? Repeating it in 2026.
All right. Between the two, I'm higher on Montreal than I am on Ottawa, but I have concerns about this. This is what I keep coming back to. A lot of you people seem to think the Rangers are going to be playoff team this year, right? All right. Well, who's falling out? Columbus thinks it has a chance to make the playoffs. Detroit thinks this could be finally the year. Buffalo still has hope. The Islanders think that they can come back and get back in the playoffs. Who's coming out? Not Toronto, not Tampa, not Carolina, not Jersey. Washington might regress a little bit, but they're not going to go from the top seed to out of the playoffs. The Panthers are still going to make the playoffs in my mind. So who's falling out? It's most likely Ottawa and or Montreal, right? Just because of the sheer volume of better teams ahead of them. Like, they took big steps last year, but that one step, progress isn't always linear. You take that step into the playoffs, it doesn't mean you're getting back in for the next decade here. I have concerns about both those teams as a result.
You make a really good point about the numbers game in the East, and I think that both of them are vulnerable. I even wonder if Toronto is a little bit vulnerable after losing Marner, although I think, if Anthony Stolarz can be what he was when healthy for 50, 55 games, that would help a lot. But that's an open question, right? So I think those are all vulnerable teams in the Atlantic. I think between these two, I'm buying the Senators slightly more. I think Montreal and the young talent on the way is really hard not to like, right? I mean, Lane Hudson was fantastic last year. They may have repeat Calder winners because Ivan Demidov is going to be the Calder favorite this year. You bring in Noah Dobson to that mix, right? Like there is a lot of reasons to like the Canadiens. And yet I also can't help feeling like the second, post Four Nations stretch last year for them was a little too magic carpet ride. Like a lot of stuff went right. They were extremely healthy. Nick Suzuki was not just one of the best centers in the NHL, one of like the 10 best centers in the NHL after the Four Nations break. I don't know that I see him there like over a full season. And he's a really good player. He's a 1C all day, but like 90 points over a full season again, I think it would be really hard for me to see him repeating it. And Sam Montembeault being as good as he was, we don't know what does Dobson look like if he's not power play one and Hudson is, right? Like some of these things I think are a little bit harder. Now, Montreal is still really talented and the talent may overcome all of it, but I think Ottawa's was maybe just like a little more repeatable the way Ottawa did it.
You're forgetting about Sidney Crosby, Montreal Canadian from March.
Well, if that happens, I take it all back. How about that?
No, I'm all for new blood in the league. I want to see Buffalo make that leap finally. Detroit would be great. I want to see a playoff game at Little Caesars Arena. I love it when the Islanders get in because it pisses everybody off because everybody hates them. They're so ugly when they play. I love that. Like, I want to see new blood into the playoffs. I just don't know who's fallen off. There's the teams that are in, that are locked in. They're just models of consistency at this point. It's hard to imagine. I want to see Columbus get in. I just don't know how the math shakes out. I feel like, we talked about how the West is so much better, and I do think it is. But like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the West is different than 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the East. That's where the East strength is.
Do you feel the same way about Carolina that you do about the Islanders? Because that's always something that I can't figure out about myself. I feel the exact same way. When the Islanders are in and everyone's whining on Twitter, don't let them advance. They're so boring. I'm like, oh yeah, now I like them more. But I don't feel that way about Carolina. Carolina, I'm like, yeah, no, I agree. It's kind of boring.
Yeah. I don't know. I as a native Long Islander, I used to be an Islander fan. I think I take special pleasure in people hating on people from Long Island. Like, like watching the Ryder Cup. I wasn't really proud of my brethren, but it was also really funny. So I think I take a little special joy in that. I don't find the Hurricanes as ugly and boring as other people do. They're a little repetitive to watch sometimes. But I kind of admire how that Rod Brindamore stick to it. They do this no matter what.
Oh, I admire them. I'm just saying I have a harder time like getting swept up in them, right?
I agree with that. I think that's just because they've been better too, right? They're like legitimate contenders everywhere. Where the Islanders spiked those 2 Final Four appearances, but nobody ever mistook them for a true contender. They're kind of this scrappy underdog that just is like beating people up on the way into an 8 seed. And I enjoy that a lot.
That's right. It's the underdog of it all. That's exactly what it is. And let's bring in now Jesse Granger. And Jesse, we've been going through some of our biggest questions today ahead of the 2025-2026 NHL season. And we got a couple goalie ones that I want to hit you with, not to pigeonhole you too much, but I think we've brought you in pretty much every time we want to talk about Connor Hellebuyck here. So here's one of our questions for you. Will Connor Hellebuyck win the Vezina again? And will we remember that he won it because he didn't have a good playoff again?
I mean, I didn't think he was going to do what he did in these playoffs this last time. I was the one kind of championing the fact that he's playing better than he ever has, and he's going to get over that hump. So it's to be seen, but I will say this. If I'm a Jets fan and I'm rooting for Connor Hellebuyck to lead this team to a Stanley Cup, to me, this is the optimism. This is where you can find optimism. There was his famous quote that he said during the playoffs. Nobody has watched more goaltending. Nobody's researched goaltending more than I have. And he's right. And he was kind of clowned for saying that, and it wasn't the best time to maybe bring it up. But this guy researches and thinks about the way he plays more than any athlete I've ever spoken to. And I think he learned some things in those playoffs. I've spoken to some people that work with Connor Hellebuyck that said even they will admit, like, yes, he was a little rattled. He started getting off his game. He started trying to change things in his game. He thought this isn't working. It's 2 years in a row now that the playoffs, it's not working for me. Let me change my game. Let me try to do something different. It wasn't working. It didn't work. It made it worse. I do think he learned some things in that playoff run that he's going to take, and I assume Winnipeg is going to be a playoff team because he's good and they're good. I expect Connor Hellebuyck to have learned some things. I think he's going to enter the next time he enters the playoffs, I think he's going to do it with a different mindset of maybe I don't need to think so much. Just let my kind of body react, let my body go on autopilot and let it do the things that I'm so good at doing that he does all season long without thinking about it. I really do think that there were some encouraging signs. You look at the way he played in the second round, it was much better. He wasn't his brilliant self, but he was much better. And I do think that he's going to look back on this. And I think that when he lost to Colorado, it seemed like he kind of just was like, that wasn't, I played fine. They just found ways to score on me. I think this time, the way it happened with St. Louis, how bad it was, I think he actually is going to look inward and say, you know what? There is something wrong. I'm not playing well in the playoffs. I have to approach this differently than I have in the past. And I think that there is reason for optimism that he actually will play the way he can when the games matter.
What is it about his mental makeup? You know him better than we do. That makes you think that this won't affect him, because when this happens to players 2 years in a row like this, no matter whether they're world class or not, it stays with them. It gets in their heads and it affects their play on the ice. What is it about Connor Hellebuyck that makes you think that he can bounce back from doing this 2 straight years?
Because he's so interested in the process of it. Like, he's not as interested in the results. And you're in locker rooms every day. We hear these guys talk about this. This is such a hockey player thing of like the process, but it's not easy to focus on the process. And I think back to Murat Atesh and I did a big story on Connor Hellebuyck 2 years ago, and we talked to his father and we talked to a bunch of people that he grew up with. And a lot of them, his dad talked about how when Connor was a young kid, he was saying yeah, my goalie coach is trying to get me to do this, but I don't want to do that. I'm watching the guys in the NHL, and I want to be the big, boring goalie. That's what I want to be, is the big, boring guy who doesn't move around. And sure enough, that's exactly what he became. He's the guy that reads the play better than anyone. He uses his 6'6" frame to get in the way. I think he thinks about things differently than any other human I've ever spoken to. And the way he focuses on the process, I think that can help him in terms of going into the playoffs. If he's doing his process right, I think that can help his mind in terms of not focused on what the past results were. And as long as I do my process the same way, whereas I think in this last playoffs, I think he got rattled. I think he changed his process and he thought, what I'm doing isn't working. I need to do something different. And that was the worst thing he could have done.
Will we see Winnipeg lean on him a little less in the regular season, maybe? Will there be some kind of shakeup in just how they approach him just to make sure he's at his best in the spring?
That's a super interesting question. I would love for them to do that. It's the funny thing is, if there was a season where they could have done that, it was probably last season, because they ran out to such a big lead and they were cruising to the President's Trophy. So we don't know how this season's going to play out. They may have to lean on him more just to get to the playoffs. You never know. But I do think, they didn't change anything behind him. Eric Comrie is still their backup. He's not the most talented backup in the league, but he is a veteran guy that they can kind of you're not afraid to put Eric Comrie in the net during the regular season and have him get you some wins. So yes, if it was me, I would be looking to get him less starts. We'll see if that's feasible or not, because like I said, if you're chasing a playoff spot, what are you going to do? You're going to play Connor Hellebuyck every night.
I think the key is what you said in your very first answer, though. It's great to do all this research and think about goaltending as much as possible. The more you think, the less you're reacting. I think that may even be an origin to some of this. So I think that's really interesting. Let's stay with Winnipeg here and go to something that's not a goalie. And maybe, Laz, I'm going to start with you here, because you know Jonathan Toews as well as certainly anyone on this podcast. When I heard he was coming back to Winnipeg, I thought it was a really good story, and I thought he could contribute in a depth role, be a veteran leader. Is he going to be their number 2 center? Are you buying that is a viable path here?
Winnipeg seems to be, right? That's their goal, is to have him be their number 2 center. And it just, look, I want to see Jonathan Toews succeed. I think he's the most interesting guy in the league this year. The ceiling is so high and the floor is so unbelievably low. We don't know, how he's going to look, how he's going to handle the grind, right? Because with his health issues, his chronic health issues, long COVID, chronic inflammatory syndrome, all these things he's got, it's the recovery that's going to be the most difficult part. In his last season in Chicago a couple of years ago, he couldn't work out. He gained a lot of weight because he couldn't work out because his body couldn't recover from the rigors of the game. So how are you going to be playing 15 to 18 minutes a night as a number 2 center if you can't recover. Now, hopefully he's better now, but these are chronic conditions. They don't just go away. So, I've talked to Marat a lot in Winnipeg about this. I'm very interested to see how it goes. It looks like his hands are still there. His brain is obviously still there, and he can get to, he's never been the fastest skater. He can still get to those spots. The question to me is, how is he going to be able to handle playing 3 or 4 games in a week? How is he going to be able to handle back-to-backs? Does he need special NBA-style load management to survive? Because I could see him winning a Stanley Cup this year, and I could see him not even making it to that first game against Chicago on October 30th. The range of outcomes for Jonathan Toews is almost limitless. It's by, to me, the most fascinating story in the league.
See, I have a really hard time seeing the top end of that range, though. Like you say,
Sure.
He could win the Stanley Cup. Like, that's really hard for me to imagine. I mean, he's already got a tweak in the preseason.
Well, Connor Hellebuyck's
sure
his goalie.
everyone
I
does.
understand. Yeah.
well, for one, Winnipeg did have a tough offseason, like losing Nick Ehlers, and now, Dylan Sandberg's going to be out 6 to 8. I think I read. Adam Lowry's going to miss the early part of the season. Like, they need Jonathan Toews right away to be good. There is an example of a player who has been out of the league for a couple years coming back. It's a recent example. It's a high profile example and being good. And that was Gabriel Landeskog in last year's playoffs. The difference there, and I don't know that we can overstate this, is 5 years. Like, Gabe Landeskog at 32, that's old for a hockey player, for a top 6 hockey player at this point. Crazy. I don't like saying that. I'm 30, right? 37's a different ball game, Jesse.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, to tie these two conversations with Hellebuyck and the Jets and Toews with the Jets, I think I'm fascinated in what Mark was talking about of maybe load management and maybe don't make him the most important player during the regular season and because I think that part of the issue with Hellebuyck in the playoffs isn't just himself. It's the way the Jets play. I like my goalie tier story comes out today, actually. And one of the big things that a lot of the goalie coaches talked about when I asked him about Connor Hellebuyck and his playoff struggles was, the Jets are overrated. Like, I think that people think the Jets are better than they are, and then they get to the playoffs and they play, and they win so many games during the regular season because there's a lot of bad teams in the NHL, combined with the fact that Hellebuck's so consistent. They get this inflated record, but the truth is they don't play that well against the best teams, and they don't play the type of playoff hockey where you have to be strong in front of your net. A lot of these goals that are going on Connor Hellebuyck are screens and deflections, and it's just the Jets aren't playing playoff hockey as well as they need to win, even if their goalie was playing well. And to me, Toews, yes, they lost some stuff, but they add Jonathan Toews. I think he could be the difference on this team if they can manage him and keep him healthy. He knows how to win playoff hockey. Like, I think he could be a super valuable asset to this team that can, and again, if you can just get guys to clear the front of the net a little better, Connor Hellebuyck starts feeling good. Mark jokes he can't win the Stanley Cup because Hellebuck's his goalie, but if you get Connor Hellebuyck to play him to his peak in the playoffs, you're going to win a Stanley Cup because he's your goalie. So it's like if Toews can bring that playoff like hockey to this team and give them something in the playoffs, I think he has a chance to make a huge difference, like Mark said.
We have only seen Jonathan Toews in the playoffs one time since 2017. And that was during the COVID playoffs. That's how bad the Blackhawks were for all these years. And Jonathan Toews, he was 32 at the time, 33 maybe. He looked like old school Jonathan Toews. He had a huge game in the one when they knocked out the Oilers in the first round, whatever they call it, the preliminary round. Jonathan Toews was the biggest reason why. He does know how to win. That said, by the end of that Vegas series, the first full round of that, he was on the bench, unable to move his legs. He was like hoping that Jeremy Collinson wouldn't call his name because he wasn't sure if he could make it over the boards. This is what he's been dealing with for 5 years now. So I get, yes, he can play playoff hockey. He does play that heavy style that succeeds in the playoffs. He's a Conn Smythe winner for a reason. He's one of the all-time clutch players. He's a great leader, all of those things. I just don't know how his body will hold up. He doesn't know how his body will hold up. You can train all you want in the offseason and feel great entering the season. How will you feel in mid-December after game 30-something? That's the only question I have.
Right. And when I say that I have a hard time seeing the upper end of the outcome, like that's part of it. It's not Jonathan Toews, the competitor, is a legend. He's amazing. Endless respect for what he brings, to a playoff, to a team, to a playoff series, all of those things. The issue, I think, is can you ask him to do that in such a prominent role? Can you ask him to not just be on your second line, drive your second line based on how they're constructed? I think even if Adam Lowry, if his line can elevate and maybe be the number 2 line in terms of minutes, and Toews' lines, I like him much more as a number 3 on a playoff team. Then I can just work myself into believing that a 37-year-old who hasn't played in the league in 2 years can drive a top 6 line for a team. Right now, that's what they would be asking him to do. So I think it's hard for me to
fully
see.
agree. If he's their third or fourth line center, it'll work. If he's their second line center, I don't think it will.
Yeah. All right, Jesse, you're in Vegas, so I think you're the perfect one to field this one. And it's obviously it's a sensitive one as we talk about some of these Hockey Canada guys that may or may not come back into the league now after this trial has ended. Do you think that Vegas is going to sign Carter Hart? I think that they're the team that everyone's watching.
Yeah, I do at this point. It's all signs point to them, and that's a lot of that is reporting by our own Chris Johnston. It seems like they're very close. Wouldn't surprise me if a deal's announced. Not announced, but if a deal is agreed upon anytime soon. Obviously can't sign until October 15th, so I don't expect the team to announce it until then. This team will not announce. I'll put it this way: this team will not announce it until it's official, because that's how the Golden Knights are, and I don't see why they would want to go through this PR twice instead of just once when they sign him on October 15th. So, yes, I do think there's a very good chance the Golden Knights sign Carter Hart. How it goes is I'm not nearly as certain. That is going to be fascinating to watch. Like you said, there's a lot of non-hockey stuff to this, but even just the hockey stuff itself is incredibly complicated. This is a guy who hasn't played hockey in 2 years. I think at a position that it's probably the hardest to come back from. You talk to a goalie who misses 2 weeks with an injury and he comes back and you're like, how was practice? Well, it's hard to get back to the speed of things. And then he gets back into a game and it's like, well, practice was good, but now I have to get used to the speed of things in a game and reading plays and all this stuff. And Carter Hart, it was not a particularly great reader of the play. Like when I watched him at his best in Philadelphia, I thought he was more of a goalie who relied on athleticism, relied on kind of hand-eye coordination, not so much reading the play. So it's going to be super interesting, assuming he does sign with someone, how the hockey stuff goes. And obviously that's not even the most complicated part of it, but even that part, there's still a lot of moving parts, and we'll see how he ends up playing. There's also the fact that he didn't play that well towards the end of like the last couple of years that he was playing in Philadelphia, even before all this time off. So yeah, it's a risky move in a lot of different ways.
That's what I wanted to get at here. Like, setting aside everything else, like, why would this guy of all guys be worth the inevitable PR hit that you're going to take? The fans you're going to alienate. He was a subpar goalie. His last few, he came out, he had this great pedigree. I think he was a high pick. And he had 2 really good years coming out. And then he was a mediocre at best goalie the last handful of years in Philadelphia. Is he that much better than Akira Schmid, who currently is the backup to Adin Hill?
I don't think he is, but the Golden Knights clearly do. If they're willing to go through this PR of what they're going to go through to sign him, they clearly do believe he's an upgrade. Akira Schmid wasn't great last season. They traded for him from New Jersey. He came over. He played almost the entire season in the AHL for the Henderson Silver Knights. And to stick up for Akira Schmid a little bit, the Silver Knights were one of, if not the worst teams in the entire AHL. They were a disaster, so they weren't helping him a lot, but he was really, really bad in the AHL. He lost his job to Carl Lindbaum, a much younger goalie with less experience, basically in his first pro season in North America, and he ended up becoming the Silver Knights starter by the end of the year. Akira Schmid, at the end of the NHL season, he gets called up, he plays a couple games. He had like a .940 save percentage in those 2 games, so he looked good, but there is reason to be concerned about Akira Schmid, but it's not even just him versus Carter Hart. To me, like, I look at waivers, and like last night on waivers, I mean, there are good goalies. Michael DiPietro in Boston got waived. Nico Daws in New Jersey. Capo Kakinen got waived from Montreal. Clay Stevenson got waived from Washington. He is a guy that, if you're listening out there and you've never heard of Clay Stevenson, I think by the end of this NHL season, you'll know who Clay Stevenson is. He is the 3rd goalie in Washington who has been kept in the AHL and stored. He's been dominating down there. The Capitals don't have room for him up there because they've got 2 good NHL goalies. This is the first time they've ever had to put him through waivers. He's never had to go through waivers before. I would not be surprised if he gets claimed, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's a really good goalie in the NHL. So there's a handful of veteran goalies that are good out there, that are good bets to be a good backup. And if you're going to sign Carter Hart, you have to clearly believe that he is not just better than those guys, but without a doubt, like that's a different tier of goalie that you think you're getting. So it's going to be interesting to see how it works out. It's like I said, it's risky, and there are other moves that maybe seem like they would be less risk with the same type of reward. But if you really believe Carter Hart, I mean, he was a high draft pick. He is an athletic kid. He makes some insane saves. I will say that, like, if you go through like every goalie in the NHL and you take the top 10 most impressive looking saves they've ever made, Carter Hart stack up with any goalie in the league. Like, he makes some ridiculous acrobatic saves. It's going to be interesting to see how his consistency level is after all this time off.
And by the way, I know we have some new audience here on YouTube. For those who have not listened to our show much before, when Jesse throws a dart at a goalie at this time of year, it's usually something you want to pay attention to. If you want to go back and check out what it was a year ago, pretty good track record here. Jesse, thanks so much. That is going to do it for us today. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Athletic Hockey Show. Please, if you're enjoying the show, leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Frankie Corrado will be back with you on Wednesday between two Seans, Gentili, McIndoe. We'll see you then.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell to stay informed on the latest in the world of hockey. And join our Discord community and stay tuned here for new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.